Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host, Henry, and we're now down to just one game in the NFL. That's right, the Super Bowl is happening in 2 weeks. Actually, more like a week and a half at this point. And because of that, the conference championships are over. We have 2 games to talk about. Only 2. Honestly, half of my notes are basically taken up by the coaching moves because there's been a lot of coaching moves so far in this offseason. I mean, we had, I think, 10 teams fire their head coaches either during or after the season. So, yeah, there's a lot of head coaching vacancies and a lot of offensive coordinator, or not just offensive, just coordinator vacancies in general to go over. So I'm going to do that after I go over the games. The games honestly shouldn't take too long, but I'll get to them in a little bit. One other point that I want to make is that, so the reason I did not have an episode come out this past Saturday, I was hard at work, basically working the entire weekend on my most recent YouTube video, briefly summarizing Grand Navel Thrawn. I would very much appreciate if you went and checked that video out on my YouTube channel. Once again, it is Henry the Host, all one word. You can find it on YouTube. You can find this here podcast on my YouTube channel as well, along with many, many other videos that I posted. My most recent one was obviously that Thrawn video, which I put a lot of work into, and I'm very happy with how it came out. So I would love some support over there on that there video. As for now, though, let's get back into some football here. So once again, there are only 2 games. We'll start with the first one. That was the 2-seeded, I think they were, the 2-seeded Patriots going into Denver to take on the 1-seeded Broncos. And like with many places this weekend, there was a lot of snow. We had a massive snowstorm hit, I think, both America and Canada. Like, that was just, it was everywhere, except for Seattle. There was no snow up there, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, Denver got a ton of snow, although it didn't really show up till the second half. It was pretty clear for, like, it was flurries, but it wasn't, noticeable, I'd say. Like, it wasn't sticking to the ground or anything like that, and it wasn't like, it was definitely different in the first half compared to the second half. But yeah, it was either way, it was very cold. The Patriots went into Denver. Denver was missing Bo Nix, among other people. They were also missing J.K. Dobbins, who had been on IR for a good while. There were rumors that he was going to, or not necessarily rumors, but like there was a chance that he could have come back. He was activated off of injured reserve, and he was practicing again, I think, but couldn't quite get back in time, unfortunately. There's also no Troy Franklin for the Broncos, as I believe he got injured in the divisional round, if I remember correctly. So the Broncos were missing a lot of offensive weapons, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And to start off, it didn't look like it was hampering them. Jarrett Stidham, who was their backup quarterback, actually, I think one of, if not the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the league, if I remember correctly. I think he's like on a now it's technically 1 year because the season's over, but he signed a 2-year, $12 million contract in the offseason. So it was like $6 million per year for a backup quarterback, which is a lot of money. Sean Payton clearly believes in him. It's actually formerly I think a 4th round pick by the New England Patriots in, I want to say 2019. I'm pretty sure is when it was, because people were like, not necessarily hyping him up, but like they were saying he's going to be the heir apparent to Brady for like a hot minute, and then that never happened. But yeah, that was former New England Patriots quarterback Jarrett Stidham was now leading the Broncos. And to start off, he actually played pretty well. Like he had a deep pass to, I think it was Marvin Mims, set them up for a touchdown a couple plays later that Stidham threw. It was just after that they couldn't really get much going. Patriots couldn't get much going either, to be honest. Like it was an offensive struggle, essentially. Neither team was playing well in offense. Drake May did not really have all that good of a game, if I'm being perfectly clear. He went 10 of 21 for 86 total yards, got sacked 5 times as well. He did not turn the ball over. That is the key thing. He did not turn the ball over, and that is a very important aspect. It was really the Patriots' run game was having a much better time for as much as Drake May didn't really damage the Broncos in the passing game, he was doing well in the running game. He carried the ball 10 times for 65 total yards. He also scored the lone touchdown for the Patriots on about like a 3 or 4 yard touchdown run on like the one really good drive that paid. Well, actually not even that. I'll get back to that because it took me a sec to recall what happened on that touchdown drive, but it was late in the second quarter, and I'll just skip to that now because there is no offense basically outside of the initial Broncos touchdown drive. There was basically no offense, and it was getting late in the second quarter, and the Broncos were on their own, probably like 20-ish yard line, roughly, like backed up towards their end zone, getting close to their end zone. And there was immediate pressure on Jarrett Stidham, who was attempting to kind of try and flip it out, I think kind of towards a running back, maybe just to try to throw it away and avoid the sack. Instead, he kind of got contacted on his arm, and the ball went backwards, and it was blown dead, like after the Patriots recovered the fumble. They initially ruled it as an incompletion. They then overturned it to a fumble and a backwards pass. So it set the Patriots up basically in the red zone. And that was when Drake May would score a couple plays later from I think it was like 3 or 4 yards out on a rushing touchdown. The only touchdown the Patriots would score this game, where they tied it up 7-7. There's obviously a bit of controversy if it was it a pass, was it not a pass, forward, backward pass and all that. So you always get a little bit of controversy when you get, I feel like when you get Patriots playoff games, there's always going to be a little bit of controversy. But either way, the game is over at this point, so there's no real arguing with, you can argue with it, but there's no changing it, essentially. The pass was ruled a backwards pass, therefore a fumble, and it was recovered by the Patriots, set them up for their lone touchdown drive. So it was 7-7 going in halftime. There was actually, towards the end of halftime, both teams had a chance to make a field goal. Both teams also missed the field goal. There was a lot of that going around. There's some bad special teams plays this weekend. And about midway through the third quarter, I don't think the Patriots had scored yet, but it did start snowing hard. Like, the first half was pretty blank. The second half was a lot of snow. The Patriots also kicked one field goal at this point in the second half, making it 10-7. The Broncos and Will Lutz attempted multiple field goals. Will Lutz missed all of them. And in the end, I will just say right now, no one scored in the fourth quarter, and the Patriots would win 10-7 in a really ugly game. I'm going to be honest. It was not the most entertaining game to watch. I know there's plenty of people who like, snow games and, hard fought defensive ones, but even then it's like, just neither offense was playing all that well. Like, Stidham was okay. He wasn't great. Outside of his technically not opening drive because they went 3 and out in the first drive. The second drive, the touchdown drive, he was good there. Then outside of that, there's just not much. There was a point where the Broncos got like into field goal range, but attempted to go for it on fourth down and failed. I think it was on a 4th and 1, and they failed. And that obviously would come back to bite them because they lost by 3 points. It was just not great overall. The Patriots on offense were also having a terrible time. They just really this whole postseason, like their offensive line was not having a good time. Drake May was definitely could have been a lot better, but protected the ball, and that was important. Compared to last week against Houston, where he was fumbling it constantly, he was not doing that this time. He just wasn't throwing the ball that much. But in the end, it was just a lot of punts. It was just, I can go punt, punt, touchdown, punt, 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 turnover on downs, punt, fumble, touchdown, punt, punt, missed field goal, halftime, field goal, punt, missed field goal, punt, 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 missed field goal, punt, interception, end of game. That was how the game went. So, yeah, Jarrett Stidham would throw a bad interception late in the game. He was just kind of forcing the ball. It was like getting towards desperation time. So it's like, it was a bad throw, very much an underthrown ball right to the, I think it was Christian Gonzalez who intercepted the ball. But it's like it was getting to the point where it's like they needed something to push down the field, and in the end, it just didn't end up happening for them. But it was, unfortunate for the Broncos. There's a good chance that if they had Bo Nix, they would have won this game because, again, the Patriots, honestly, this whole postseason, their offense has not been looking very good. Their defense has been looking very good for most of this postseason. But, again, it's with the asterisk of playing the Chargers without an offensive line, C.J. Stroud having the worst game of his life, and the Broncos without Bo Nix. But again, credit the Patriots defense, especially against C.J. Stroud, because they played a heck of a game there. They played another very good game here. Really, only the one drive that they allowed the touchdown was really only the bad one they had. But it's like, it's not the most insane. This is not a Linsanity run, essentially, for the Patriots. This is definitely one of the easier paths to the Super Bowl in NFL history. I'll say that. But yeah, so the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl, hosted in Santa Clara, California. In Santa Clara, California, in Levi's Stadium, home of San Francisco 49ers. So the everyone else in the AFC East, especially, are living their nightmare. The Bills, Jets, Dolphins. The Patriots had their 5 years where they weren't, a dynasty. The Bills had their shot and they blew it. And I'll get to the Bills after I recap the second game because there's a lot to go over with the Bills. Not in a good way either. I feel very bad for Bills fans at the moment with their owner. I'm a little stuffy at the moment because of the bad weather, so that's why I'm having, the audio quality for me is not the best. And I'm, the occasional voice crack. That does seem to happen when I get a little stuffy, from what I can tell. But anyway, we'll move on to the second game, the later game, and that was the 5th-seeded Los Angeles Rams going into Seattle to take on the 1-seeded Seattle Seahawks in the trifecta of matchups between these two this season. And honestly, both, I've definitely the second one that they had, the overtime game, and I'm blanking on what happened in the first game, but I feel like it was also a good game. But once again, the Seahawks and the Rams delivered in a very fun matchup, very different matchup compared to the Patriots and the Broncos, as this was a high-flying offensive shootout. Both Stafford and Darnold combined for basically over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns between the three of them. Neither of them threw an interception. This was a very entertaining game of football. The Seahawks would score a touchdown. The Rams would kick a field goal. They actually kicked 2 field goals, then score a touchdown. So it was, at one point in the second quarter, it was 13-10. It was very back and forth. Seahawks scored a touchdown. The Rams scored another touchdown. It was like third quarter especially would just go touchdown, 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 touchdown. It was a lot of back and forths in the best way possible. Jackson Smith-Njigba had this insane catch on the sidelines where he was like reaching behind him and made a one-handed catch to set up. I think it was the field goal that the Seahawks kicked in the end of the first quarter. It was really cool. And it looked like to start, the Seahawks would be pulling away a little bit. But then they kind of faltered a little bit. It took them a little bit to get going again toward around the second quarter. And then the Rams started to come back. But then the Seahawks scored another touchdown. And, 13-17 at halftime favored the Seahawks. They just never really let up after that. The Seahawks would end up winning 31-27. Funnily enough, for as much of a shootout this was, neither team would score in the fourth quarter. It was 31-27 at the end of the third quarter, and it remained that way. The Seahawks would punt after 8 plays, and basically 5 minutes of game clock. The Rams would actually march down the field and get into the red zone. They had a goal-to-go situation from like the 4-yard line, and would wind up failing to convert on a fourth down. Obviously the field goal wouldn't have given them the lead at that point. And they instead just didn't convert, and the Seahawks would go 11 plays in 5 minutes. They would punt the ball, but in the end it was good enough because it basically left the Rams with no time. But there was a point where the Rams, on their final touchdown that they scored, it was a little surprising they didn't go for 2 to try and make it a 3-point game. They instead kicked the extra point. Or actually, did they? I feel like, did they miss the extra point or did they go for it? No, I'm fine. No, they did. Why did it say? That's weird. I feel like ESPN. Oh, yeah. Okay, ESPN was just being weird on how it marked things down. It was saying 26-31, but I'm like, that's not right. Anyway, so yeah, now I'm surprised because I remember the Rams kicked the field goal there, and I'm like, why didn't they go for 2? Because they would make it a 3-point game if they converted. I don't know. Also, in terms of special teams, the Rams would muff a punt on special teams and set up Seahawks for prime real estate. This is in the third quarter. And literally one play after that, they would score a touchdown. It was, really the one big mistake the Rams made in this game was muffing that punt. I think it was the only turnover they had. They actually fumbled the ball 4 times, but only one was actually lost. and it was by Xavier Smith, the punt returner. So that was the only turnover of the game, and that was kind of what cost the Rams. Like the Rams did not play a bad game whatsoever. They definitely they would struggle at times to contain the Seahawks offense, but it's a lot of teams struggle to do that. It was just they made the one mistake in the turnover differential, and that was one of the big reasons that cost them. Because outside of that, it was not a bad game played by the Rams. The Seahawks were just playing a little bit cleaner. That's not to say the Seahawks were perfect. Looking squarely at Riq Woolen, who had like the worst sequence possible, where I think it was in the third quarter, and there was a point where the Seahawks had forced the Rams to, I think, a 4th and 12 after Riq Woolen had been involved essentially in a incomplete deep pass, and he was basically started chirping to the sidelines, like he was looking at Sean McVay, at the Rams bench players, and he started talking trash to him and got flagged for taunting, and which gave the Rams a first down. And then I forget it was the next play or like 2 plays, but I think it was the next play. Riq Woolen gives up like a 40-yard touchdown pass. It was kind of embarrassing to be honest for him. It was not good to say the least. Was it the one in the fourth quarter then? Where? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it was actually in the. Or no, was this? No, this wasn't the third quarter. It was the end of the third quarter. So it was. He gave up a 34-yard touchdown pass to Puka Nacua, who had a good game. It was very, very typical for, you do something bad and like the mistakes just kind of pile on, and it's like he got picked, or he made a dumb penalty and then just got picked on for a touchdown pass because it was not good, to say the least. In the end, though, he got bailed out by the rest of his team, but you hope he doesn't do that in the Super Bowl because it was not good. Other than that, though, the Seahawks were playing pretty well. JSN had 10 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown. Darnold had an insane game. I just combined insane and amazing for amazing or inane. Darnold went 25 of 36 for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns, was sacked 3 times. It was a good overall performance for Darnold. Stafford was like basically right behind him. He had Stafford went 22 of 35 for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was pretty nice. Neither team was doing real great on the ground. Like Kenneth Walker had a solid game, all things considered. He had 19 carries for 62 yards and a touchdown, but I think the Seahawks were definitely feeling the loss of Zach Charbonnet. They just didn't quite have the same dynamic to their rushing attack as they normally do, which is, pretty obvious as to why. But in this game, I would assume they probably would have liked to have Charbonnet and, have a bit, lean a bit more on the rushing attack, but their passing attack got it done. So I don't think they're going to complain, going to the Super Bowl, and, potentially there's potential here for the Seahawks now to look ahead to the Super Bowl. It is a rematch of Super Bowl 49, which was Patriots Seahawks back in 2014. I think it was technically 2015 was the year it took place, but it was the 2014 season. That was, of course, the Malcolm Butler interception game, or the one where the Seahawks didn't run the ball on the 1-yard line with Marshawn Lynch. And it kind of stopped their dynasty before it could really get started, because they had the previous year just absolutely beat down the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had the number 1 offense, where they're like one of the best offenses in NFL history. And they showed up to against the Seahawks, who had a Legion of Boom. That was like prime Legion of Boom. And the Legion of Boom just completely shut down the Broncos that game. That was the one where, this is in Super Bowl 48, where first offensive play of the game, the Broncos were up, and they fumble a snap into the end zone for a touchdown for Seattle. And it was like a 43-8 game or something. It was like, or 48-3. I don't know. It was a complete blowout, essentially, in that game. And then there was, a chance for them to become a true dynasty, but instead they threw the ball on the 1-yard line, and have only now since made it back to the Super Bowl. They very different Seahawks, obviously. They had some playoff appearances here and there in the mid 2010s, or like mid to late 2010s and 2020s, but this is a very different Seahawks team, a much better Seahawks team, a very good Seahawks team. And again, I had said when this playoff started that I thought the Seahawks were going to win the Super Bowl. I maintain that case. I think they are a much better team at the moment than the Patriots are, and they're playing much better football than the Patriots are. So I will be surprised if the Seahawks do not win the Super Bowl. They're playing in one of their division rival stadiums in San Francisco. So Niners fans are hating life right now. And, they have a chance to avenge that prior loss in the Super Bowl. Basically, like, all the NFC West, all the AFC East are hating life right now with the Super Bowl matchup. The Jets especially are wishing they were fans of a different team or a different sport, since, you have your evil overlords in the New England Patriots having basically completed a rebuild in faster time than you have. Once again, the Patriots were down and out for about 5 years, and now they're suddenly back to going to the Super Bowl again, while the entire time the Jets have been in hell, essentially. To be blunt, they have been in hell. And then they're going up against a team who is starting the quarterback you drafted in 2018, third overall. So yeah, I don't think Jets fans are necessarily rooting against Sam Darnold, because I don't think a lot of Jets fans hate Sam Darnold. It's just still kind of like, it's of course the guy that we drafted is going to Super Bowl with a different team, and he's playing really good football there. And it's like same with Vikings fans. They have a good season with Sam Darnold. Let him go because they want to see what they have with JJ McCarthy, and then immediately Sam Darnold goes on to the Super Bowl. Well, the Vikings have an awful season. So there's that. There's also the fun and also sad statistic for some teams, mainly the Bills and Ravens and Browns, is that of the 2018 quarterback draft class, which, includes number 1 overall pick Baker Mayfield, number 3 overall pick Sam Darnold, I want to say the number 9 pick Josh Rosen by the Cardinals. Josh Allen was, I think, the 13th pick. I actually don't remember what pick he was for the Bills. And then Lamar Jackson, who was the 32nd overall pick for the Ravens. Not to mention all the later quarterbacks taken in non-first round, or not in the first round. Among all of them to at least start Super Bowl, it is Sam Darnold. He got there before Lamar Jackson, got there before Baker Mayfield, got there before Josh Allen, which is crazy. I don't think after year 1 people would be saying that. I don't think after year 3 people would be saying. I don't think even before the year people would be saying this. Like, it's a crazy stat. But yeah, Darnold has. He's starting in the Super Bowl, has a good chance of winning it. Obviously, it's not a given. Anything can happen. And I'm not counting the Patriots out. I just think the Seahawks are better. But there's still certainly a chance the Patriots could win a Super Bowl here and, just make everyone outside of New England incredibly miserable again. But anyway, let's move on to the coaching news and basically everything not involving the 2 games, because there's a lot of news to go over. So I'm just going to run down my list, because this is kind of in chronological order, because I would write down what I would see when I got the news on Twitter, or basically anywhere else. But it was basically just, days when I'm going through my feed and I see it's like, oh, that's some news I should write down. I would basically write down that. And so that's why I'm kind of going in chronological order here. So I'm going to start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hiring former Falcons offensive coordinator Zach Robinson to be their offensive coordinator. I'm going to be honest, I forgot who the Buccaneers offensive coordinator was, who was in 2025. I feel like he got fired. I could probably look back through my notes, but it's just doesn't really matter too much. It'll be interesting to see. It's obviously Baker Mayfield's going through another offensive coordinator. I don't know too much about Zach Robinson or how his offense perform. This is just kind of me reporting the news. This is not one that I can really comment too much about. Could be good, could be bad, who knows. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys hiring Philadelphia Eagles secondary coach Christian Parker as the defensive coordinator. I think this is a pretty good hire, for as much as I don't like either of these teams. Obviously, the Eagles secondary has been performing very well over the past couple of years, and the Cowboys had hit one of the historically worst defenses of all time. So I think there's not really anywhere you can go from up compared to the Matt Eberflus-led defense. Obviously, he was not working with a ton of talent, but even still, it was embarrassingly bad. So this is, I think by default, this is an upgrade for the Cowboys. How much of an upgrade remains to be seen, but I think for them, this is a good hire. And their defense is probably going to be markedly better. Or remarkably better. I don't know, whatever word you want to describe it. I think it's going to be a lot better this in 2026. So I guess, yeah, technically this year than it was last year. Next up, this is a big one because it's one of the head coaching on the head coaching news front. The Baltimore Ravens hiring now former Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter as their head coach. I've been talking to some Ravens fans at my work and just Ravens fans that I know. And at least one of them was every time I would see him, he's like, and asking the question, like I would ask him, who do you want your head coach? And he's like, number one, I would want Jesse Minter. And he got his wish. So I think this is a good hire for them. He knows a Harbaugh system. He was obviously working under Jim Harbaugh this past year in LA, but from what I've seen, he's a good coach and, you get younger and this for the Ravens and John Harbaugh, it got to a point where they were kind of treading water, spinning their tires in mud, whatever expression you want to say for it. They were just kind of doing the same thing over and over again and just couldn't get the results they wanted. And it was just time for them to part ways. And I think a new voice as head coach is good for them. The stories you want to say about the Harbaugh locker room and all that and everything going on there, that's whatever. I'm not going to get into that because I don't follow the Ravens enough to know about it. But I think for someone who, for a team that has needed, I think, a new identity up top for a while now, this is a really good move. Just hope that he actually remembers to use Derrick Henry for 60 minutes in a game and not 30 or, find someone to replace Daniel Faalele because apparently Faalele is a Pro Bowl alternate or something, and I have no idea why. It's same with Shedeur Sanders is also now a Pro Bowl alternate. I have no idea why either, because over Joe Burrow, I might add. I got nothing for that. There's been some strange moves, or just strange decisions. Speaking of strange decisions, by the way, I'm kind of jumping ahead chronologically here, but just because I want to fit this in now. So Bill Belichick was eligible for the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame. And for some reason he did not get in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I have no idea why. Literally everyone I've seen online, and not just random people, literal players and NFL executives and all that, people in the game are incredibly confused. It's apparently one of the voters was a former Colts GM and coach or something like that, who's been on the committee for a while and has he would lose to Belichick a lot in the early days, I think, from what I've seen, and he was lobbying hard mainly for the from what I've seen, it's mainly the Deflategate and the Spygate stuff that is supposedly what has held Bill Belichick back from being a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is dumb. From the Deflategate, it was not a thing. It was a hoax. It was started because the Colts were incredibly salty that they lost by 30 points in the divisional round. Just got their doors completely blown off by the Patriots and tried to come up with a conspiracy to, save face. Spygate is what it is. You can have your opinions on that. I just don't care at this point. But it should not be for as minor as it was. It should not be what holds literally one of, if not the greatest coach of all time, back from being a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think Belichick's. I think he's only behind Don Shula in terms of career wins. He has 8 Super Bowls to his name. 6 with New England, 2 with New York. Back when he was the Giants defensive coordinator in the 80s and 90s. I don't know what more you want from a head coach than Bill Belichick. So I don't know what's going on there. It was like the Baseball Hall of Fame when the one guy didn't vote for Ichiro as a unanimous Hall of Fame ballot, which is it's ridiculous because Ichiro is one of the best baseball players to exist. He had how a person on the Baseball Hall of Fame voting list did not vote for Ichiro in that year where he could have been a unanimous. You should have your credentials revoked. I'm just gonna say that right now. Ichiro is total side tangent, by the way. But yeah, Ichiro should have been a unanimous Hall of Famer. Bill Belichick should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's my piece right there. Anyway, moving back to coaching news, the Kansas City Chiefs are hiring Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator, so they're bringing him back. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans. I know he and the offense performed well when he was there, but that was a different time. And that, again, Andy Reid was running the offense, and Eric Bieniemy has had one of the worst times as an offensive coordinator in Washington. Like, he was basically running the team from all the testimony I've seen from players. And he ran a team that he basically ran a team that went, 3-14, I think is what it was. There's a reason why Washington was picking number 2 overall in 2024, and why they could get Jaden Daniels was because the team was terrible. And Eric Bieniemy was one of the key reasons why. He was just awful at his job. He didn't know what a running game was. He didn't know how to, scheme for protections against the blitz. He thought having Sam Howell, a rookie, well, technically not a rookie, a second-year quarterback, a fifth rounder at that, fifth-round second-year quarterback who had only played in one game the year prior, should be throwing the ball like 50 times per game. I could go on about Eric Bieniemy. He was awful, just awful in Washington. So I'm sorry, Chiefs fans. He could be good, but I don't think he will be. There was a point where the Bills were actually interviewing Philip Rivers for their head coaching job. He did not take it, but that was a fun little headline that, Philip Rivers, who had been out of the NFL spotlight for like 4 years, suddenly came back, played a couple games for the Colts, and then suddenly started interviewing for head coaching positions for the Bills. Like, it was very weird. The Bills did not hire him as head coach, though. They actually hired their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, as their head coach. I guess more promoted their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, as their head coach. And for the Bills, just because I can go over this while I'm here, they're not in a good spot right now. Since they fired Sean McDermott after the wild card loss, and then their owner, Terry Pegula, who is a complete doofus, went on a press conference after the fact. And it was the worst press conference in a good while. It was really bad. He was basically saying that the firing that he had with the reason why he fired Sean McDermott was because of the loss to Denver, and it was basically almost on a whim. It was really bad. And then there's he's siding with Brandon Beane, who's terrible at his job, the general manager for the Bills. Then they got he was completely throwing Keon Coleman under the bus, where Terry Pegula was talking about Keon Coleman, the much maligned second round pick at wide receiver in 2024 that the Bills had, who has been a healthy scratch for a good part of the year. And he was basically, Pegula was like, yeah, the coaching staff was lobbying to draft Keon Coleman, not us. We didn't want him. When in reality, if you watch back to all the footage from Hard Knocks or whatever, you can see that Brandon Beane was heavily pushing for Keon Coleman. He was in love with Keon Coleman. And it's not looking good for the Bills at all. I don't know if Joe Brady's going to be any good. It feels more like a puppet hire in a sense, where Brady's just going to be a puppet for now team president or whatever it is, Brandon Beane, and the owner, Terry Pegula. It's not good. These are kind of how Super Bowl windows start to shut, because they dumb owners keep the guys who are brown nosing them but aren't doing a good job around. They get rid of the guys who are, well, maybe not perfect. Sean McDermott was a good head coach for them, and he had the locker room. He was the guy the players loved, and now he's gone. And I don't know. I think the Bills are probably going to be taking a big step back unless something crazy happens, because they have Josh Allen, but he can only do so much. And when they have a completely inept general manager who's just drafting bum after bum to their team, and can't find a good wide receiver, can't find a healthy defense, can't find a decent offensive line either. I mean, their offensive line's okay, but it's just not good. It's not good for the Bills at all. Next up, also in head coaching news, to move on from the Bills, moving to a different AFC team. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers hiring, of all people, Mike McCarthy. And I'm not impressed with his hire whatsoever. They part ways mutually with Mike Tomlin or I guess Mike Tomlin's technically stepped down. And instead of looking forward and trying to forge a new identity for themselves, get away from the stagnation that they've been suffering for the past, 10 years at this point, to be honest, they instead basically hire an offensive version of Mike McCarthy, of Mike Tomlin. Like Mike Tomlin was a defensive guy. Mike McCarthy is basically the same type of coach, but an offensive-minded coach instead of a defensive-minded coach. I think this is a very lame hire, a very lazy hire. They're basically just going to try and run this back again, and again and again and again, because nothing's going to change for them. There's a decent chance Aaron Rodgers comes back to them again to pair up with Mike McCarthy. And I'm sorry, Steelers. This is not a good hire for you on the surface. I mean, who knows? But it just seems like they're treading water and just trying to do the same thing, trying to do what quote unquote works. You win, have a winning record, get to the playoffs, but that's their ceiling. Like they can't get any higher with how their team is constructed and how their approach is. Like they don't have a quarterback that can really elevate the team at the moment. They don't have a high enough draft pick to find one, nor in a draft class, it seems, that can really have a quarterback that can elevate them. And their philosophy is their offense is way too stagnant and their defense is way too reliant on big splash plays compared to just rugged reliance your Texans or the Seahawks. This is probably not going to be a very good team. That's my guess. That's my prediction for the Steelers. I don't think they're going to be a very good team next year. And unless McCarthy can just completely turn around the offense, I just don't see it happening. So after that, we'll move down a little bit in the coaching rung. So the Miami Dolphins are hiring Bobby Slowick, former offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. I forget where he was this year. I don't remember if he was in the NFL or if in college or anything like that, but he was on the Texans for their 2023 season, and I think also 2024 before he got fired in 2024, if I'm remembering correctly. But he had a lot of praise in 2023 for a Texans team that had a very solid offense. And then obviously things fell apart in 2024. But now it's starting to looking like a lot of that might not have been his fault, and that Stroud's rookie season might be a mirage because Stroud has not looked very good the past 2 years. So, for a Dolphins team that is looking to be very different from what it was before, I think this is a good hire for them, essentially. I like this hire for the Dolphins. I'm actually blanking on who they hired for their head coach. Who did they hire for their head coach? Because I'm pretty sure they have they. Oh yeah, Jeff Hafley. That's who it was. The Packers defensive coordinator. That's who it was. And yeah, so I think that's a good hire for the Dolphins there. I think that, I don't know how, I don't think their offense is going to look great just because I don't think they have a lot of, their quarterback question is glaring, and outside of really Devon Achane, they don't have too much on the offensive side of the ball that can really threaten defenses. So we'll see how it goes there. And then speaking of the Packers, they are hiring Jonathan Gannon, former Cardinals head coach, former Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator, as their defensive coordinator. I was kind of hoping the Commanders were going to get him. Or I guess I wouldn't have been unhappy if the Commanders had gotten him as their defensive coordinator. Instead, he goes to the Packers. So I think this is a pretty solid hire for them. He seems like, he was obviously not a very good head coach whatsoever. He was not in a very good situation in Arizona, but he was not a very good head coach nonetheless. But for a team that has a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, obviously Micah Parsons is the headliner, but they have guys like Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt as well. The secondary could use some work, but it's a Packers defense that played really well at stretches in the season, and hopefully when Micah Parsons is healthy again, they can get back to that level. But I think Jonathan Gannon is going to have a much better time with in Green Bay than he did in Arizona. I'll just say that because he actually did assemble a pretty solid. He had a lot of good players in Arizona as well. It was just there's a lot going on there essentially. So next up, the Tennessee Titans, who had hired Robert Saleh as their head coach, former New York Jets head coach, is now hiring the former New York Giants head coach, Brian Daboll as their offensive coordinator. So I think this is pretty solid for them. I think Brian Daboll, while he certainly had a pretty bad record as a head coach and had a lot of problems there, I think he's a pretty solid offensive mind. And I think he's a pretty solid developer of players. I think obviously he had his main claim to fame is being the offensive coordinator for Josh Allen when Josh Allen was in Buffalo, or not when Josh Allen, he's still in Buffalo, but when the two were together in Buffalo, and molding a guy who was really struggling early on in his career to becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the league. It's why he got the job in New York, and even then, even if he had a pretty rough time overall in New York, I think this is good. I think it's good for Tennessee. They obviously have the young quarterback in Cam Ward. So I think Cam Ward is going to have a much better time with Brian Daboll than he did with Brian Callahan. Again, it's kind of like the Cowboys and Matt Eberflus situation where I feel like you can only really go up at this point because the Titans were just so bad in 2025. But I think this is a very good coordinator quarterback pairing for the Titans here. So I applaud the hire here. It's kind of funny that they have two former New York-based head coaches who were fired in the past couple of years now manning their head coach and offensive coordinator staff. So next up, the New York Jets are parting ways with their offense coordinator, whose name I'm blanking on. But yeah, I think it was a mutual decision between the two. But for Aaron Glenn and his coaching staff, he no longer has a coaching staff, basically. Like his offensive and defensive coordinators are gone. I think the special teams coach is gone as well. Basically a full reset for the Jets here in 2026 outside of their head coach, which, again, I'm surprised they kept Aaron Glenn around because he just did not really show anything whatsoever. Again, I get he had a really terrible team around him, but even still, it was not a very good showing in year one for Aaron Glenn. And when head coaching staff, or not a head coach, just a coaching staff overall that he assembled is now basically all gone. Not a very good look, essentially. So I don't think the Jets are going to be doing much better this year. I'm going to be honest. I don't think that's a really bold prediction, but I wouldn't be super surprised to see Aaron Glenn let go at some point in 2026, essentially. After that, the Denver Broncos have fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi. And this one, I know if I remember correctly, he was in Los Angeles a few years back and he was terrible there. The Chargers, I should specify. I'm pretty sure this is the same Lombardi, and it could be a different one, but I'm pretty sure this is who it is. So, the Broncos offense definitely was not their strong suit this season. It was their defense. But also, I'm pretty sure Sean Payton calls the plays, so I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this one. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. We'll see. And then I think the final piece of news, because I'm not a super into the Broncos, so I can't say too much about it. I'm just reporting the news there that they have fired their offensive coordinator. But the final news I believe I have here is the Washington Commanders finding their defensive coordinator in Durante Jones, the passing game coordinator from the Minnesota Vikings. From what I can tell, he's basically Brian Flores' protege, like his number two. Flores is also staying with the Vikings as their defensive coordinator. He signed an extension with them. So I feel like the Commanders kind of got the next best thing with him. They instead get his number two. I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. The Commanders are going with two rookie coordinators for their offensive and defensive positions. David Blau, the offensive coordinator, and now Durante Jones, their defensive coordinator. But from everything I've seen, he looks like a pretty good guy. He's a bit younger. First time as a coordinator, as a major coordinator in the NFL. So hopefully he can bring some youth. I just need the defense to not be completely terrible, and I'll be happy. Obviously the team needs a lot more talent on the defensive side of the ball, and they also need to stay healthy on the defensive side of the ball. I'm assuming the Commanders are going to go defense with their 7th overall pick. There's a lot they could take there. I think a lot of people are saying Caleb Downs, or if he's there, or Arvil Reese, who I think is the linebacker out of Ohio State, And then I think it's David Bailey and then Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rushers, like two of the top edge rushers. There's a lot of talent in this draft for the Commanders to choose from. I'm hoping they go defense, to be honest. Like either that or a wide receiver, but I'm okay with them looking for a wide receiver in free agency. I think there's a lot of good wide receivers to look out for, like someone like Alec Pierce they could target, or Romeo Dobbs as well. There's plenty of guys they could get to complement Terry McLaurin in free agency, and then go with a big name defensive guy in the draft. But that is a couple months away at this point, so we'll see how that goes. There are also some other things that I'm remembering now. So for the head coaching vacancies, there are still 3 left to fill. The Browns, who seem to be really struggling, I think they're leaning towards their defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, but they're like struggling to actually get people to come back for a second interview, which is kind of embarrassing. Also not super surprising given that the organization is just the worst. But yeah, the Browns, then the Cardinals, I feel like there's just been no news on the Cardinals whatsoever on their head coaching search. So we'll see how that goes. And then the Raiders, we have not seen much from them either. Obviously also not the most enticing position in the world, but does have the number 1 overall pick to entice them. And the good chance that they draft Fernando Mendoza. So there's that for whoever wants to take the Raiders head coaching position. There's just, I don't know. We'll see. Also in terms of coordinator news, because this popped in my head, for the Eagles, their offensive coordinator position is still vacant because they demoted Kevin Patullo essentially. Didn't fire him, just demoted him, but it doesn't seem like anyone's in a rush to take that position either, which is not super surprising given that the Eagles are a mess behind the scenes from what it seems, and that their offense is heavily overrated and kind of got exposed this year. So yeah, once again, any chance I get to dunk on the Eagles is always a fun day. But yeah, the Eagles still do not have that offensive coordinator, which to some is definitely a bit of a surprise given the weapons that they have. But to others, it's not super surprising given the dysfunction that seems to be permeating from that entire organization at the moment. Anyway, I think that will do it for this episode. Almost turned into Palpatine there. Do it. Got to get that out. Got to get at least one more Star Wars reference out in here. I've been in a Star Wars mood lately. Although I've actually been, my current audiobook that I've been listening to is actually a Warhammer 40k book, Hell's Reach, which I'm almost finished. I'll get it probably done either tonight or tomorrow. One of the two. But anyway, yeah. That will do it. Not quite sure what I'm going to do. I want to get something out Saturday. I'll probably have more time because I'm not going to be spending the entire day working on a YouTube video. No idea what it will be. I'll try and figure out something. Also, not sure what I'm going to do next week for next Tuesday because there's no football whatsoever. It's the first time since September that there's no football going on. And then, like there's the Pro Bowl essentially, but it's the week in between between the conference championships and the Super Bowl. I'm thinking for now though, what I might do for next Tuesday is recap so far what has happened in baseball's free agency, because spring training is going to show up sooner rather than later. And I think a lot of the big moves have already happened so far in free agency for baseball. So I think I might just pull up, honestly, I'd probably just pull up Jeff Passan's Twitter page and just kind of start running down some of the list. Because obviously I'd have to talk about Pete Alonso to the Orioles or Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers. And, some of the other big moves that I'm forgetting. But yeah, I think that's my plan for next Tuesday. Obviously, I want to keep Saturdays for non-sports stuff. So I'm going to figure out something to do for Saturday. No idea what it will be, but I'll figure out something because I think I want to do sports Tuesdays, nerdy stuff Saturdays. We'll see what happens though. For now though, that will do it for this episode. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.